Yes.
Stand for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All this space. Roll call, please.
Alderman Kavieski.
Here.
Alderman Miller.
Here.
Alderman Rozak.
Here.
Alderman Shaw.
Here.
Alderman Ellis.
Here.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Here.
Alderman Zwart.
Here.
Alderman Stray.
Here.
Okay, first item is approval of the meeting minutes from October 16th, 2018. We need a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second. Any questions? None, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes pass. Next item, comments and suggestions from citizens. Anybody has anything they'd want to say on any subject, come up to the podium, fill out one of the blue cards, and we'll take your information. First, I have one card tonight, Lisa Waller. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Lisa Waller. I live at 515 Greenland Avenue. As a resident of Oconomowoc, I am asking our Common Council to defend us against an overreaching federal government. The installation of 5G cell towers is going to negatively impact our health, our privacy, and even our mental well-being. It has been well established that non-ionizing radiation causes a host of health problems, including sleeplessness, anxiety, heart problems, neurological problems, and cancers. The federal government is overstepping its constitutional limits by proposing Senate Bill 3157, which allows for the installation of mini cell towers in close proximity to our homes. This violates the Fourth Amendment, which protects our right to be secure in our persons and in our homes. These cell towers will bring 10 times the radiation that we currently endure. Our homes and bodies will be flooded with radiation 24/7. Since every law must be in compliance with the U.S. Constitution, this federal bill, 3157, is in direct conflict with the Fourth Amendment and should be nullified on a state level. As the 10th Amendment clearly states that if the Constitution is silent on an issue, the federal government has no authority on that issue. The authority rests with the state and with the people. I ask you, Oconomowoc's leaders here on the Common Council, to do three things. One, research the dangerous effects of the radiation these cell towers produce. Number two, collaborate with state legislators to declare an act of nullification upon this bill. And three, begin a lawsuit like San Jose, California, Seattle, Washington, and Huntington Beach, California. The U.S. Conference of Mayors, which represents 1,440 cities, is supporting these lawsuits. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll move on with the rest of the meeting. Next item is the consent agenda. Under consent agenda, we have licenses and a treasurer's report. So we need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Questions? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Okay, we've been requested to change the order of business here a little bit due to time constraints, and I'd like to, without objection, move under new business item B up front now, if that's okay. It would be before the triathlon.
Oh.
Okay. So I'm going to move it up. The item is consider act on approving use of Lake LaBelle for Lake Country Triathlon on August 10th, 2019. We need a motion to approve the use of Lake LaBelle.
So moved. Second.
John, you want to explain this?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for moving the agenda item up for us this evening. Silver Circle Sports is requesting to utilize City Beach in Lac La Belle to host their third annual triathlon. It has an additional flavor this year as being a half Ironman, so it'll draw a significant amount of people from the outside the Oconomowoc area to our community for visiting and staying in hotels and having tourism impact in our downtown after the race as well. So it's a great addition and change. Our municipal code 21115, races, regattas, sports, and exhibitions require the use of Lac LaBelle to have approval by the Common Council. So the request, special event permit request, meets all the requirements. He's met with the police department, our staff, all the guidelines have been met, and the final piece is getting the approval from the council this evening. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Sean Osborne is here this evening and be happy to respond to them as well.
Thank you. Open it up for questions, discussion. Go ahead, Derek.
Is that a different weekend than the art festival, by chance?
The weekend before.
Yes,
That's what
it
I
is.
thought.
It's a
I
week
just wanted to
earlier.
verify that it is.
1 week earlier.
Aaron?
Refresh my memory. How many, which annual one is this, or did you say that already?
I believe it's the 3rd.
Third? And have we had any negative pushback from citizens on this event?
I wouldn't say we've had negative impact. We work extremely hard, and Sean and his team works extremely hard to send out postcards and notifications to the residents that are along the running routes. They set up and clean up effectively. We've had 0 issues from our perspective, and the police department monitors it as well, and they have not reported any problems.
I seem to have heard a lot of great things about it. I was just wondering if you've heard anything negative.
Oh, no.
It's all good, except if once in a while had a water problem a couple of years ago, right? So I got 8 months to start training.
Lou?
I have heard some comments about street closures associated with not only this event, but other events. And I don't know if anybody else has heard them. The economic impact, the exposure to the community, and the way that this event is run and other similar events, specifically that this organization has sponsored, I think is done very, very well. And I'm in full support of this.
Mike?
The only, how did it work with the farmer's market? I know we had a little bit of.
They just ran
pushback.
right around them.
Well,
don't think we had
actually, the first year that Sean requested this, we met with the farmer's market, and he
Right.
continues to meet with the organizers of that event, and they do not offer the farmer's market on that weekend because of the event.
Okay.
And they've agreed to do that again this year.
That's fine.
And you?
I have about an hour of questions, John. That's it.
Let's go.
Charlie?
Yeah, Lou, I've also heard some concerns with some of the local business owners when there's street closures. And the closure I've heard the most on is when Main Street is closed, and it looks to me that this doesn't close Main Street at all.
That's correct.
So I've talked with the gentleman involved with his business, and he's good with it as long as it doesn't close Main Street, because he's got a 24-hour business. He's got emergencies he's got to get in and out for.
How long will streets be closed for this event?
Sean, do you want to respond to the timing of all those elements? I don't remember exactly how long the closures are.
Thank you. And thanks for moving us up today.
Sure.
The roads close at 3 a.m. We hire a crew to go out and start setting cones on Wisconsin Avenue, and then the final course closures at 2:30 p.m. There's time limits on this event where you have to be through each stage, otherwise you pull your bib and you're disqualified.
So from 3 a.m. to 2:30 p.m.?
Yes, sir.
Homer, they're going to pull your bib.
In my high chair too?
Questions? Seeing none, there's a motion and second on the floor to approve the use of Lake LaBelle for the triathlon. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Kavieski,
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Okay, next item is under Personnel Committee. It's consider act on the Wisconsin Professional Police Association union contract for 2019 to 2020. We need a motion to approve the contract.
So moved.
Second.
Yes, I'll report on this. Our police professional union contract expires at the end of 2018. We held a bargaining session with the union and came to a tentative agreement. The union went back and did ratify the tentative agreement. The provisions of this contract change it's basically a wage contract. It is a 2-year contract for 2019 and 2020 with a 2.5% COLA included in each of those years. In addition, we have some cleanup language in here regarding just union membership from the state law change, some clarification on expectations at the end of a shift duty, vacation request timing, and then the final two provisions are in addition to, we will be instituting a field training officer pay rate for times when an officer is designated as a field training officer during training of a new officer, that they will receive the same pay as an officer in charge. In addition, there was one final provision in the police union does have a VEBA trust in which they can, if sick leave is not used during time periods during the year, they can donate sick days into that. We added a provision to add one additional sick leave day if no days are used for the entire year.
Okay. Do you have any questions? Go ahead, Kevin.
In reference to the COLA, is that done at the end of the year, and is that given in the form of a check, or is that added into their payroll?
It's added right onto their wage rate. So their wage rate will be increased as of the beginning of the year by the 2.5%, and then they'll receive that each paycheck.
Okay, thank you.
Pat?
Yeah, just the questions I had in the committee of the whole, I just wanted to put on the record in front of, the city. I just had a few questions regarding Article 6. The officer in charge and field training officer and the chief answered my questions, I think appropriately. There will be very few times, there could be a few times where somebody could be both a field training officer and an officer in charge, but it's pretty de minimis.
That rarely happens.
Yeah.
The field training officer would also be the officer in charge.
And when someone's doing the field training officer, one of the questions I had is how involved in that, and you indicated it can be very involved. So
It's very involved. It's 14 weeks long. It's 8 hours a day. You're in a squad. We review all the laws, all the policies, all the ordinances.
And I'm assuming there's got to be some time afterwards. You're grabbing, dinner or something with the guy that you're riding with and helping him out. I mean, there's got to be more involved too than just the 8 hours. It seems.
Yeah, well, they become a mentor for the rest of their career in addition to that, and yeah, they do get together.
That was the only question I had about it. Otherwise, I have no other issues with that. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and second on the floor to approve the police contract. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Okay, under protection and welfare, the first item is consider act on a resolution granting the new 2018-2019 Class B and Class C licenses for EYM Pizza of Wisconsin LLC. We need a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Diane, you want to?
Yes, thank you,
Explain
Mayor. So Pizza Hut is now under new ownership. They closed on November 7th, so they have been operating under the new ownership. They have applied for a Class B beer and a Class C wine license. They meet all Chapter 12 licensing requirements and state requirements. Therefore, I recommend the approval of granting the licenses. Also, they will start serving alcoholic beverages on November 21st if council approves the licenses. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Call the roll.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Nay.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to public services. First item is consider act on a resolution awarding the engineering contract for the 2019 street maintenance projects. We need a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
Moved and seconded. Mark, you want to explain it?
Thank you, sir. Following the city's procurement policy, we put together an RFP template, which was sent out to about 15 different consulting firms. 7 of them responded. A team of 5 individuals reviewed the responses, 4 of them city staff. One of them, the engineering services manager for Waukesha County, assisted us in on this process. We ranked the firms, and then the cost envelopes of the 2 highest ranked firms were opened, and based on the overall process and the cost, we're recommending Rupert Milky, which was the low cost, at $291,772 for completing the work for this process.
Thank you. Discussion. Go ahead, Kevin.
We had 15 that were out.
I sent out 15, so
Right.
what that is that I look back at firms that had responded in the past. I have all their emails. So we didn't have 15 firms contact us and ask them. I just sent them out to them. So there were some that didn't even respond that, because they didn't request it as to why they weren't.
And
potentially
received
submitting
7,
something.
we received 7 of them back.
Yes.
The firm that you're recommending, have we used them before?
Yes.
Okay. I'll hold on to my next questions.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Matt.
I've got a couple. I wasn't going to do it during the other meeting because we were kind of running late, but I've had past problems with, and this was one of my questions during the budget cycle, and Derek correctly pointed out in the meeting that we spend about $800,000 to $900,000 a year with Rupert-Milke every year, and it's a year after year type of deal. Mark, do you know if Rupert-Milke has a specialty area? Is there some part of their engineering that they're specialists in? Are they specialists in roads and in parks, water main crossings, or are they just like a generalist firm? Do you know anything about them?
Rupert-Milke does civil engineering design, and they only work for municipalities. So this is the type of work that they do consistently throughout the area.
Why, in this RFP, and I didn't see it before it went out, but we combined a lot of these projects. Like, I understand doing all the streets together, but then, the Northeast Regional Park and the water main crossing, why did we combine all of these things into one bid? Do we think we get a cost savings out of that, or is it just easier to do an RFP that way?
So we're going to look for when we bid this out, to have a contractor doing all of that work. So that's why everything is in here, and it's part of this RFP. The Northeast region, there was the streets up there that were not part of the original contract when we constructed that area up there, and we had that cost allocation with the 5 entities. We always knew that we were going to come back as a separate project for doing that paving. The same thing with the park. So, those are items that are up to be completed this year. They're in the budget that'll be before you tonight for the completion of that work, at least for the Northeast Region Park. But we combined everything because we wanted to put it out as a bid to a prime contractor to get all that work done.
And the reason I ask that is some of these projects, like the Northeast Regional Park, I mean, that should be a much simpler engineering project than I would imagine, the water main crossing, for instance, or some of the roads. And I think when you combine a lot of these projects that have dissimilar kind of goals and concepts, and I think funds that we put towards it, there's a way to kind of backfill some of the money. So I guess in the future, I'd like to do that. One of the things Derek mentioned during the other meeting, which I completely agree with, is moving towards separating this. And this isn't the first time we've asked this. We've asked this multiple times to separate out the inspection services. It was a big deal with the construction project in the back. And I know there was a lot of debate. We must have debated that like at least an hour or 45 minutes, having separate construction management and the actual engineering. And within that question is, here we've got construction management services and construction inspection services. Is that really the same service?
Yes. So that's the whole, so you have the design phase of the project, so that's the engineers putting together all the plan sets and everything, and then you get into the construction, and so then you have a project manager who oversees, the construction project. They're the lead person. Any issues that come up go through them. They look through and handle all the pay requests, any change orders, any conflicts. They're the ones that are involved. Construction inspection is going to be field personnel that are out there daily with the contractors, watching all the pipe going in and curb and string lines and elevations and doing all that part of the work. There's also a construction survey where they have to go out and stake the utility routes, the curbs, the elevations, and doing all of that work. So it does go as one.
So, I mean, that leads into the overall comment, and I know that it wasn't agendized as this, but we have to look towards separating those services out in the future.
We're more than willing to look at that.
I mean, we've got to look at it. I'm going to vote against this for a variety of reasons. That's one of them. One of the things he said in the other meeting is that Rupert-Milke got all of the first place ranks out of this group of 5 people. Is that true?
Yes.
So all 5 of these folks, including someone from Waukesha County Manager of Engineering, all rank them as #1.
Yes.
And why, do we know, I know you made some comments on the drop-off, but there's a significant drop-off from Rupert Milky and Baxter and Woodman. Then when we get to the others, it's pretty significant, 20 to 30 point drop-off. I think you said some of those reasons were guys not completing the RFP properly. But what do you assign points-wise? So if someone's a real good quality engineer, but they forget, for instance, a certificate of insurance, I mean, do they lose 10 points for something like that? Do they lose 5 points? I mean, or is it just arbitrary based on the RFP grader?
So every individual that's grading these can look at that, how they feel, and weight it the way they wish. My comments in the committee meeting were based on my scoring. So, to completely not include something, I only, subtract 3 points. If they provided, some of the information on a couple of the projects, it might be just a 1 point deduct. For the others, one of the larger things was, where we talked about the task hours and breaking that out and providing that information. I felt that was fairly significant. So on that 20-point line item, you could lose 6 points, and that's based on my scoring. But generally, it's 1 or 3 points. The effort that went into their project scope discussion, as I mentioned, one firm, I felt that they did nothing, so I had 0 points, but I also had a firm that I thought did a very good job and had all 20 points. So it does range.
My last question, if the mayor will indulge me, is when these large projects are going on in our city and we're doing, 10 streets, or we're doing the whole Northeast Park or whatever we're doing, is there ever interaction between the engineering firm that's doing that work and our city engineer? There has to be, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so there's interaction. And I think the fact, and again, I don't think this is nefarious, but that our city engineer and the engineer we continue to hire for all the outside projects, that interaction, I'd like more of a break there. Because that if there's that interaction, there's gonna be a lot more give and take. It's that their cake is cooked, everyone knows they're gonna get it. And that's how I feel. And Derek said the same thing in the meeting. They get it year after year after year, and it's kind of easy for me to see why. So I'm going to vote against this tonight for those reasons. I appreciate you answering the question, so thank you.
Kevin?
Looking at the technical scores here, Payne and Dolan, did you look at their bid, how much they were proposing to do this?
No. So as explained in the RFP process, that it's 2 steps. So the first review is technical. Well, let me back up a step. So when they submit their information, we get 2 separate envelopes. One has cost, one has technical information. Cost envelopes stay in the possession of the clerk's department until we've done all the technical review. And then based on the technical review, where you needed to get at least 80% of the points, we would then request, however many envelopes met that requirement, and then it would be open then.
Okay.
So in this case, we only opened the 2.
In that technical review, could it be that one firm can only specialize in a specific thing, which thus means that they would not bid out other parts of what you're looking for? You understand what I mean?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
So you've looked at the first 2. Can't see it because I don't have my glasses. And you said you opened up their envelopes because they came to you complete, correct?
I didn't hear the last part. Because they came through?
They came to you complete. In other words, they gave you all the information that you had requested for the RFP.
The number 1 ranked firm did have the 80% of the points. The number 2 ranked firm.
That's not my question. My question here is you only opened those 2 envelopes, in this case, the bids or cost, whatever, because they checked all the boxes. They gave you all the information that you needed to be able to score.
I think I can help you with your question.
Am I speaking English?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
So we don't, in this case, there's not check boxes where we would not open the envelope. We assign the points. So if something's missing, they would get a deduct, and that would reflect in their score if it's not complete. So you might be missing one thing and still be eligible if you get enough other points for a cost envelope to be opened. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense, and I guess my point here is I like the idea of the separation, because maybe that firm, whatever firm that may be, doesn't specialize in a specific thing. And then maybe one can get the engineering and then one can get the other, you see? So I'm liking the idea of that being separated.
Okay. Eric?
I talked a lot in our committee meeting, and I'll try not to be quite as lengthy here, but you had mentioned that you only got you felt like you only got one firm that was qualified, but you opened 2 envelopes, I think is what you said, just because you didn't want to come back with one.
I noted that the second firm had received 75% of the points, not 80%.
Okay.
And so we did open up.
But you didn't open the rest, and your comment was you didn't feel they were even qualified to open their bid. And I feel that's a problem if we're only getting 1 to 2 what you feel like are qualified bidders for our engineering projects. I mean, it's a lot of work to only get 2 firms bidding, and one of them, I believe, has probably won the bids 9 out of the last 10 years or something like that, correct?
Yes.
And also is our city engineer. So there's really no separation, in my opinion, between our city engineer and the firms that win these bids time and time again. I think by separating the engineering and the construction management services and survey work, you'll see more qualified firms bidding on these projects because they know they're going to possibly get one or the other, and they'll put the time and effort into doing a quality RFP, and we'll also have somebody else potentially either doing the design work or looking over the design, because right now we have the same firm looking over their design, doing the construction management, and also overseeing the whole thing as our engineer. I mean, if I had my druthers, I'd say that whoever's the city engineer, their firm can't bid on these projects, because then they would truly be objective. I'm going to vote no on this. I've asked year in and year out to have these functions separated, and I asked for it to be done actually tonight, but I guess legally maybe we can't. And then lastly, we do pay. We've averaged over the last 5 years, we've paid $4.4 million to Rupert Milkie for their services over the last 5 years. That comes out to about $880,000 a year. We could probably afford to hire our own engineer, or 2 or 3 at that rate, to do some of the services that they do. And then I just feel like that would potentially be the right thing to do. I'd like that to be looked into as well. But for sure, I would like a committee to be formed, committee of the whole, to go over and see if we should have a policy where we separate our design from our construction services.
Mike?
I'm going to support this, but I do agree with Derek as a future. I just think we're too far along with this right now, so I'm going to support this process, this RFP right now. But I do agree 100% with you as far as.
Matt, you had something?
Oh, just real quick, is anybody here in the audience from Rupert Milkie? Is anyone here from Rupert Milkie? So, I mean, that's interesting, right? We're awarding a $300,000 contract to someone, and they don't even bother to show up and maybe answer a question or two or say, hey, thanks. I think that's telling.
Anybody else over here? Karen?
I'd like to echo what Mike said, that, we're just too far into this process right now, but that we should definitely look into separating these out in the future.
Okay. Lou?
I think it's interesting, and I completely respect your positions, but I think it's interesting as council, as we go through these processes where we discover or evaluate better process, but decide not to implement them on the current task because we're too far along. If we have a better process, there's never a better time than to implement it on the task at hand. So for that reason, and I do believe the separation is important, and I think it will ultimately provide better service to the community. I'm gonna not support this.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
I just want to, excuse me, comment on the process. The Committee of the Whole did review the template for for this RFP back in 2015. That is the process that staff used to release the RFP. We did have comments, individual comments, about looking at splitting it out. I did not have a consensus of the council to revisit that process. So we follow the consensus of the council. We've heard in the committee there was a vote. We'll bring that back forward for future to look at the RFP template for the future. As far as then the process, again, followed the template, released it. We did our qualifications-based selection process during this, which is what we use consistently across the city for all of our professional service contracts, so that there's the element of the technical and the cost when we're bringing forth a recommendation, and that's something that the council had looked at as well. In this particular case, in this contract for evaluation, we did try to involve individuals that haven't been involved in reviewing the engineering in the past for the city. So we had the outside person from Waukesha County, and in addition, we had 2 newer staff members that hadn't really worked with our city engineer in the past. So we were trying to address some of the comments that we have heard as concerns from the council to bring in those fresh set of eyes. So I just wanted to comment on process because we did follow what the council has directed. And we have heard now from the committee through the vote that you want to revisit that in the future, and we'll certainly bring that back then in 2019 for consideration.
I have a couple questions. Did the people bidding know our bid process?
Yes,
So they were all aware of the fact that they had to hit a certain technical score before their bids would be open, or their dollar amount?
Yep, that's right,
So
within the
if they
document.
really were, I think Derek said it takes a lot of work to do these, and I agree, it does take a lot of work to put together a proposal. But they were well aware that if they didn't hit the top 80%, they weren't gonna have their bid open. So it's not the city's responsibility to have the firms that are bidding do a correct RFP. It's their responsibility to put the RFP together properly. And certain companies do it better than others. I mean, that's just part of the way it is. I guess the other thing I have is we have two bid amounts, and one is 50,000 less than the other one. And I know we're always talking about budgeting and saving money and doing the best for the taxpayers, and to bypass something where we're saving over $50,000, I don't think is responsible for this group. So that's just my opinion. Kevin?
You had mentioned that the RFPs had been looked at and talked about in 2015. Am I correct?
The template, yes, the
Okay,
template.
all right. I know I'm being a Monday morning quarterback here, and I respect the fact that a lot of the time when you're making decisions, you're making them based on the information that you have at the time. And that the fact of the matter here is that then you look back and you hit yourself in the head and say, oh, why did we do that? See, one of the reasons why I ran for office was because there were some bad mistakes that were made in 2015. And I believe that this needs no disrespect to anybody, please. I believe that this does need to be relooked at, and I believe that this needs to be separated. And this is the type of stuff that I think the bus is going down the road at this point in time. We need to put a stop to it. What's going to keep another bid from coming in here and saying, well, because we're in the process right now, let's go ahead and let's okay this project? I personally think that we just need to stop it at this point. We need to relook at this. We need to relook at the RFP process, do it correctly, understanding what the mistakes were in the past, and then go forward from there. The community deserves that. That's why they put us up here. The community deserves it.
I have a question. If this is not, if we send it back, we don't do it, we redo the RFP process, what does that do to our construction timeline for 2019? I mean, are any of the roads going to be repaired? I mean, by the time you get the bids out and get all the process
concern would
done,
be
is it
getting the
really going to
bids
push
out
it
at a
back?
time that the cost would come in higher.
Costs would come in higher, so, I mean, again, I'm not disagreeing with the fact that if we want to relook at the policy, that we relook at the policy. But again, we're concerned, and we've gone through this with other projects where the big concern is cost and affect the taxpayers. And by pushing this back and delaying this, we are going to affect the taxpayers of this community significantly. I think what we need to do is move forward and then review the process as we go forward and go from there. It was never put through as a consensus. I know Derek had asked for it, but it really was never voted on to say we're gonna review our RFP process. We looked at it and said, okay, we're fine. We knew this RFP was going out when it went out. Nobody said anything to change it. So I'm just saying, if this group wants to vote against it and affect the cost and affect the quality of repairs and the quality of projects that are gonna happen in 2019, it's your privilege to do that. But then you have to listen to what the taxpayers say as well. Go ahead.
I'm under the impression that the bids were submitted with a cost for the design work and a cost for the construction based on a allotted amount of hours, correct? Construction management.
We could tell by looking at the spreadsheets, the division and the cost.
Okay. I think, I guess what I'm going to propose, like I did in committee, is that we either award the design services to Rupert Melke and the construction management to Baxter and Woodman, or we just award just the engineering portion of it tonight for what they put in their spreadsheet, and we send out the construction management services as a whole nother RFP. We have plenty of time for that. Construction management isn't a big deal right now. We don't have to get that out there.
I'm gonna turn it over to Stan.
Well, I'd have to look at the proposal. If the proposal allows for that as an alternate and they bid it that way, then you can do it. But if your RFP says it's all or nothing, you can't do it. That's why I suggested in committee that you can go back to these folks and say, look, will you take, you know, A for this price? And you can do it because they're a consultant. It's not, you know, you're not tied to like, you know.
And typically, the RFPs say there's a disclosure in the bottom that says we can award it to in any way that we want.
I haven't seen it, so I can't, but I would doubt that it was the way that was drafted. And I'm not gonna do it on the fly right now. I'm just cautioning you. Bottom line is, though, you can go back to the bidders and say, hey, will you do it for this?
I'm gonna make a motion that we go back and ask them if they would split that up and do it for what they bid the project for those particular parts. Rupert Melke for the design and engineering, and Baxter and Woodman for the construction management services.
We have a motion. Well, he's amending it.
Taking
Asking to amend the motion.
He's asking to amend the motion.
I'm asking to amend.
Okay, the motion the amendment you're asking for is to award the design and engineering to Rupert Melke for a price that we'd have to.
That's in their spreadsheet.
That's in the spreadsheet.
That Mark alluded to.
And to award the other part?
To Baxter and Woodman for the amount that they submitted it for, even though it's 10,000 more than I'm okay with.
Is it 10,000 more?
What's the difference in price? What was their portion?
The total difference in price was around $50,000.
Okay, but what was the price for the Baxter and Woodman submitted for construction management services, approximately?
Was it 10,000 more?
It was 10,000.
The actual dollar amount, though.
$253,468.
For the construction management or for the engineering?
Construction management, Baxter and Woodman.
Ooh, so that's the big portion of it.
And the engineering was for, the engineering for Rupert Melke was how much?
Read. 49,334. And there were 242,000 on construction management.
So what's the difference, 242 to, what was the other one?
11 grand.
253.
They were 49,000 for the design and 242,000 for the construction management.
Okay.
And Baxter and Woodman was 40,000 more in the design?
Yes. They were $91,000.
Okay, then, that's what I wanted. I would like to make a motion to.
We have to go back to them first, though. We can't.
Yes,
split it up, right?
but I would like to at least go back and ask them if they would accept that, and if they say no, I guess we can talk about it in 2 weeks. I don't think 2 weeks is gonna kill us. But
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on an amendment. Charlie?
Yeah, I'm not willing to spend extra money just to get a different person to be the construction management person, or company on this. It will cost the city more money. I think we can certainly look at that in the future RFP, but I'm not willing to do that with this one. I won't be supporting that.
Mike?
I agree, Charlie. I'm not gonna support that either, to spend more money.
Any other comments? This is on the amendment. Seeing none, we have an amendment to split the, let's see. It's a proposal to split the,
The proposal is to direct the Department of Public Works Director to go back to the bidders to see whether they would be willing to accept a portion of the contract in the manner that the alderman suggested.
and you don't want to have it the other way because you don't want to have the second firm getting the design because they're 50,000 or 40,000 higher, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on an amendment to have the DPW go back and try to split it. Any other questions? Seeing none, call the roll.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Nay.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Nay.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Nay.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Five to.
Okay, so the other motion, and we can't do anything with.
You're done.
Okay. So we just have to find out, and then, once we find out the information, bring it back next to the,
December
to
4th.
the December 4th meeting. And then we'll vote on it that way.
What if they only want to do the inspection?
No, the direction was, will Rooker and
Oh.
Milky take the
Okay.
design for 49,000 and not take the rest of the contract for 242,000? Right?
Right.
Yes.
Lou?
And Baxter, of course, will do it.
Of course they will, because they're getting all the money.
Right.
Can we provide direction just to kind of cover ourselves, that we have an RFP prepared for if they decide not to proceed with that new RFP is separated out?
No, you'd have to go through your whole process. You have an ordinance that lays out the process.
Okay.
If we have to do that, then we're pushing everything back probably 6 months.
I would ask,
Time we get the process done and the bids out, and then the construction, and bid the construction, and then you're bidding construction late, and it's gonna push everything back and cost everybody more. So, I mean, all we're doing is adding cost to the whole process. And I want this to be remembered next year at budget time, that this group is the one adding cost, not the staff.
Then I want us to remember when we vote on the police station tonight that we're adding 1.7 million over what we agreed to. I mean, don't,
No, this group is adding cost.
no, we're
Go
not.
ahead.
We haven't added anything yet.
first point, I'd ask the city attorney to look at the contract, and look at the RFP and see if we can split it out without their permission. Okay, I mean, I think that's,
I would like a majority of you to tell me to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I don't want to.
okay, and secondly, I talked
Well,
about the,
we already had the amendment done, so, I mean, I think we have to move on. I don't think we have anything agended for this, do we?
so I can't ask him to look at the contract?
Well, we have to, again, like he said, get the consensus of the council to
Well,
vote on it.
His point is, I am assuming that the contract does not allow us to do this because that's the way most RFPs are set up. And it would be not, you would expose yourself to potential liability for putting out an RFP and then not following through with the strict language of the RFP. Now, that's not gonna change anything between now and 2 weeks from now unless you say you wanna rescind the action you just took to wait for me to give you an opinion, so that would, change the direction here. Right now, you said, Mark, go talk to these people. If they're willing to do it, bring it back.
Okay.
But in the meantime, between now and then, in the event that they don't say, okay, I could be in a position to do that if I have a majority of this common council or the mayor telling me to do it.
Okay. The other point is the point I'd like to make is that I made this in the committee, or in committee, is that oftentimes contractors build in overages into their construction costs based on, there's always something in the plans that aren't right. Nobody's perfect. But if there's a lot of things they have to correct while they're out there, they build in, and they anticipate that, they build in higher costs on their construction bids. So we may not pay for it in design, but we may pay for it in their construction bids. And I think going to two separate functions will go a long way to helping with that. Whether it's not this time, but next year, I think that will help.
If I could, this is not a policy observation. It is an observation based on years and years of experience, 38 of doing this. You have one entity designing, and you have another entity inspecting, and there's a problem down there. It's gonna be this. It was design, no, it was inspection, no, it was design, no, it was inspection. You might open yourselves up to problems that way. Just
Okay.
throwing that out.
Then the state of Wisconsin
Oh,
that's
yeah,
how
I
they do
agree
it.
With you 100%. Yes, the state of
And
Wisconsin is
what I've been told, about half the municipalities and counties do it that way as well, so.
fine. I'm just telling you my
That's okay,
observation.
maybe we want some of that so that we get somebody at least saying there's something wrong here.
Just help me out.
Okay, so I guess that's it. Let's move on to the next item. Next item is consider act on an ordinance to repeal and recreate section 11.06 of the municipal code of the city of Oconomowoc relating to collection refuse. This is for the ordinance's first reading. We need a motion to give the ordinance its first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Mark, do you want to explain it?
Sure, Mayor. The item before you tonight is regards to our ordinance where we describe the operations for the collection of refuse and recycling. And the current ordinance is based on the collection system that we used prior to 2015, which was an up-to-drive service, weekly recycling, had different weight restrictions. So we went back through and looked at it and updated it to match the current operation that we have, which is the automated carts that are put out at the street, and recycling is collected bi-weekly in a larger cart. The ordinance changes included cart ownership, curbside placement by 6. One of the newer items is items left at the curb 24 hours after day of collection may be removed at cost to the property owner. The yard waste collection point is curbside, reduce the amount of weight that can go out there from 75 to 50 pounds, and added forfeiture wording for the third and subsequent violations. This process has been in place since 2015. We don't have any issues at this time, so we don't anticipate any problems updating the ordinance.
Okay, do we have any questions? Go ahead, Matt.
I have just a weird penalty. Did we added this violations and these penalties in? Stan, did you?
There were penalties in there in the previous ordinance. It's just that they went to the first and second offense. So we've had some added wording for the third and then subsequent.
And we stop picking up garbage if they violate something?
Pardon?
We stop picking up, we stop picking up garbage?
Well, no, if they're putting it out there prior to, not taking it up, you know, doing that sort of things, those are the things that citations would be issued for.
Okay, good. Do we issue citations to people for this stuff?
I'm sure that there's a couple citations, you know, issued throughout the year. I mean,
because I got to make some calls then and get somebody out there. Who do I call for that? The police department or you?
Well, if you call me,
Chief, he raised his hand.
If you call me, I'm calling the police department. So if you want to remove the middle person.
Okay, so most of these violations relate to, you know, like it's the long collections next week and the people put it out 2 weeks ahead of time and it just sits on the curb and, you know, rots away. Okay, gotcha, good.
A lot of times homeowner associations have rules on this too.
We do, yeah, but we don't have the fining power and police power that the city has, unfortunately.
Any other comments? Seeing none, this is for the first reading. We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Swart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Okay, going to Plan Commission. First item is consider act on a certified survey map for Matthew Kirkhoff, located at 734 Sherman Avenue. We need a motion to approve the certified survey map.
So moved.
Second.
Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. We have 2 Plan Commission items. The first one is the Kirchhoff Certified Survey Map at 734 East Sherman Avenue. It's an interesting lot. It has frontage on both Sherman Avenue and Harvard Street. There's an existing house on the property. They'd like to divide the one lot into 2. Both of the proposed lots, if approved, would comply with the TR, traditional residential zoning district requirements. The lot width to depth that is being created will be much closer than the desired ratio. The width is not being reduced at all, but the depth is being cut in half. Plan Commission did recommend approval of this certified survey map last week.
Thank you. This kind of makes it look like the rest of the neighborhood, because it probably was 2 single lots at one point and then was just purchased as a double lot. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Okay, next item is consider an act on a on the condominium plat for Village Crossing at Paps Farms, addendum number 9 for Valley Road and Gold Medal Drive. We need a motion to approve the condominium plat.
So moved.
Second.
Jason?
Thank you. This is more of a housekeeping item. The city does require by ordinance that all condominium plats come before the Plan Commission as well as the Common Council. This is for a condominium plat down in the Village Crossings development of the Paps Farms. It's actually called addendum number 9. It covers the newly created Paddock Court area as well as half of Champions Court. It matches the general development plan that the city has approved for this area. The Plan Commission reviewed this last week at their meeting and did recommend approval on to the Common Council.
Thank you, Jason. Go ahead.
It looks like Electric didn't sign as far as staff recommendation. Is there a reason for that?
Joe was not available during the window that I provided to him to come and sign off, but I was working closely with the electric utility department during the technical process, and his staff members, his engineers down there, they are comfortable with the plat. It's just Joe was out of the office during the time that so he was not available to sign it.
He doesn't have any issues. He'll sign it when he's back. We talked with the staff and they were fine with it. This is a pretty minor housekeeping thing as we move through the process.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Kavieski. Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Nay.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to unfinished business. First item is consider act on a resolution for schematic design and project budget for the new public safety facility. We need a motion to approve the resolution.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I'm going to read the resolution so that everybody in the public can hear it. This is a resolution to approve schematic design and establish the project budget for a new public safety facility. Whereas on November 13th, 2018, the Committee of the Whole reviewed and discussed the schematic design, space programming, site location, estimated budget, and draft project financing plan for the proposed public safety facility. And whereas a majority of the aldermen approved a recommendation that the Common Council to move forward with the design and bidding process, and whereas the public safety facility will be located within a remodeled and reconstructed city-owned building at 630 East Wisconsin Avenue, and whereas the estimated construction cost is $11,747,070 to be financed over 20 years under a project plan that proposes using a combination of loans, proceeds from city land sales, impact fees, and the rent from the Lake Country Municipal Court. And whereas the Committee of the Whole, as part of their recommendation, has directed city staff to promote the sale and development of the southeast corner of the 630 East Wisconsin Avenue parking lot along East Wisconsin Avenue. And now therefore be it hereby resolved, the City of Oconomowoc Common Council approves the schematic design, estimated budget, and draft project plan for the public safety facility completed by FGM Architects with an estimated construction cost of $11,747,070. Be it further resolved that the Common Council requests that FGM Architects proceed with the design, construction drawings, and bidding process to obtain the cost to construct the facility. That's the resolution that kind of comes through from those votes we took last Tuesday. So let's open it up for discussion. Go ahead, Kevin.
What, is the parking lot in that 11.7?
Yeah, that's all included in there. If you look at the the part of the memo that came from the city administrator, it goes through the police department part is 10,601,570, and then the municipal court, which is funded by the lease, the citywide technology room, contingency, and then that's the total project cost. So it's all included in there. Any other questions? Being none, we have a motion second on the floor. Let's call the roll.
Alderman Cavillas.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Are we going to get a chance to chat? This is it? We don't get to talk about why we're voting against it?
Well, that's why I had asked for questions.
Yeah, you kind of moved, I had my hand up.
Oh, I didn't see it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I just want to let the folks know that are out there watching or here today, I'm going to be voting against the public safety facility, not because I don't believe we need a new public safety facility, as I've said, and I think the council has reiterated multiple times, but we just had this discussion about whether or not our construction management for all of our street projects next year may go up $10,000. And what we earmarked a year ago for this project was $10 million. And we're 1.7 over that right now based on the current project. I think it's the wrong spot. Even though we did vote to purchase it a while back, I think there are other options. I think it's overpriced. It's too big for what we need. And we have a lot of other debt in the city, and we're going to be raising taxes this year. We're going to be raising taxes next year and probably into the near future, along with school taxes and everything else. And I think we should have tried harder to get this done for what this council earmarked a year ago, which was $10 million. Now, one of the comments that came out during the committee of the whole discussion on this a week ago was, you know, well, we'll bid it out and see how it comes in. And I project tonight that it's going to come in high, maybe even above the 11.7. And the excuse for it coming in high is going to be because we delayed this a few weeks to figure stuff out. And if that's the case, I think we have other functional problems going on in the city that shouldn't come in that high. We should have tried to keep it at 10. And I don't think we worked hard enough to do that. We do need a new police station, but 40,000 square feet is a lot of space. It assumes that we're going to add a lot of police officers. It assumes we're going to have a lot of squads in 20 years. And historically, if it's any guide to the future, we've only added one police officer in the last 25 years. So I think there's a lot of functional problems with the decision we're making. I'm not going to go over line by line all the discussions we've had for many, many hours, but there was a lot of discussion. And I guess the one really big question I have for the council tonight is, I can't figure out for the life of me, when we voted this down 4 weeks ago, what has changed in 4 weeks? It actually went up in price because we added back in the parking lot, which was a smart idea because we should have an honest vote on it. But for those that voted 5-3 against this last time, I ask you, why are you changing your vote? And what has changed in 4 weeks? Nothing's changed in the project. FGM did not do anything to try to skim costs at all or figure out how to do this for under the budget or close to the budget. So for the life of me, I can't figure out what's changed. And maybe it's just people talking. You know, maybe it's constituents saying, yeah, we really want you to spend an extra 1.7. But I hope it doesn't go over budget. And I hope the council will be courageous enough if this thing comes in at 12.5 or 12.7 or 13 or 14, that we're willing to say no once and for all, like we have been saying for quite a while. That's all I have to say.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Tom.
Sarah, how are we coming along on your impact fee study? That hopefully you can get it done by January 1st or maybe next week.
Yeah, a lot of progress has been made on it. We are really waiting for the final project estimate to be able to finalize the police impact fee to bring back to the council for consideration.
Thank you.
Karen?
I voiced that I would not be opposed to having this footprint be a little bit smaller, but I would like to clarify one thing to Matt's point about being 1.7 million over. Sarah clarified with us last time that the 10 million that was earmarked was actually just for the police station portion, and that the court section will be paid for with impact fees and with the court rentals. So I think that needs to be clarified, and I think maybe Sarah could back me up on that, and that is actually recorded in the minutes. Is that correct?
Yeah, and one clarification to what you just said, the court portion is not impact fees. We can't,
I mean, the
it-
court
yep.
and the impact
Yep.
fees to pay for that other
Yep.
portion.
So as the project currently stands, as laid out in the memo, but for the public's sake, the police department now with the parking lot added back in is at about 10.6 million. That would be funded by debt and land sale proceeds. Municipal court portion is about 635,000. That would be paid for through the lease rent from the court. The technology room is 120,000. That would be funded by the technology fund. That was an additional scope as well from the original 10 million. And then we have the project contingency for the overall project, which, you know, you don't know where that's going to, what part of the project that'll be part of, we can fund that with cash on hand from the impact fees we've collected previously, or the land sales we've done as well. So you're absolutely right.
And then selling off that outlot also puts money back into this, and the 500,000 that is budgeted to do the asphalt and the green space areas would have included that outlot area, which we would not have to now be responsible for as far as the asphalt and the green space. So that brings that number down potentially too.
Yeah, the original estimate for the parking lot, the 500,000, would have included that outlot area. We had looked at that as potentially being green space because we didn't know that we would need that much pavement over there. But yes, it was part of the project. If you end up selling that off, that reduces the scope of the project and assumably the cost.
Good, Lou.
I appreciate the fact that this council took the time and the mayor allowed us to review our options associated with moving the police department, public safety facility forward. During that period of time, we looked at our current path and a couple of additional options. I am in favor of one of those options just because it does reduce the size of the footprint of the public safety building. It utilizes land that's already been purchased, and it would potentially free up the waterfront land for private development. And Mayor, you made a great comment that those that you've talked to associated with the public safety facility are like, you just need to do it, get it done. Why wouldn't you do it? And I've had some of those conversations with some of my neighbors and some of the people in my district, and when I start talking about it, that's the initial response I get is like, why wouldn't you do it? I said, well, you realize that that's waterfront property, and you realize that this footprint is bigger than what, in my opinion, is required in order to maintain a facility that promotes the safety of our community. And I get into some of the details, and we have taken the time. There are members of this council who have taken time to go and look at other facilities. And everybody has a facility that stands out in their mind as a comparable. And for me, it was Hartford. And the size of that facility, the efficiency of that facility, and the representation of that community to ours. If we move forward with a schematic design and it comes back more expensive, do I think that this council will say, hey, I don't think we should move ahead with this because it's outside of our budget scope? I have a hard time believing that, because I believe the counter to that is if we delay it more, it'll cost more. So we have to mitigate our loss at some point and just move this forward. And I think that'll be disappointing, because this is one of those projects that this council has the opportunity to participate in that will impact our community for generations to come. And I don't think that there is one person on this council that wants to do the right thing, and I think there's just some varying opinions in what that is. I'm going to stay with my opinion and voting against moving this forward, because I think we have other options that present us with opportunities at lower costs and within a better scope to provide what we need for our community. And I wanted to take that opportunity to, again, thank you for that meeting last week, for the discussion, and it still hasn't swayed my thought in regards to what direction we should move forward in.
Eric?
I voted to purchase the Century Building with the thought that something else would go in there too, and it was put on the fast track to be swallowed up by the public safety facility, and I think it's oversized based on some of the projections. I think there's a better site that's closer that could provide cross functionality across the street, where we could gain some parking downtown, potentially keep the court in this room instead of having a separate courtroom. We could have reduced the size and provided one-stop shopping for people coming downtown here. With that said, I think something changed, and I think it became evident in our meeting that some people were they wanted to keep it there, and they weren't going to change their mind, which was evident that we were considering talking about dispatch again, and Alderman Kowalski went and talked with the county, and they gave us some information to look over, which we were given at that meeting, and it was voted on not to review this information before we made that decision, and that was telling. So I'm going to vote no, because I think there's a better site. Even if it came in at the same dollar amount, which was over budget, I still think it's a better site that we should have at least taken the time to pursue rather than find ways to shoot it down.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but there's this talking point out there that the minutes from a year ago only included the police station. And minutes are a little unclear because they're just a summary, like a shorthand of what's in there. And it does say police station, but when we voted on that earmark, we reviewed intensely the WSM study. And the WSM study had a community room, and it had the courts in it as part of their proposed budget outline. So I think in generality, we talked about the police station, but we were talking about the WSM study, which was flawed. And that included the community room, which was 2,500 square feet in that proposal. It included the dispatch, and it included the courts. So I think that's, the other thing is, so in the memo, it's not just 10.6, right? So we have an overall project contingency as well. That's another almost $400,000 in cash. If you take the courts out of the equation, you're still talking about over $11 million. So we're still over budget. So we can play with the numbers any way we want, but the $390,000 in contingency is still tax money. It might be cash on hand. It might not be taxes in the future, but people have been taxed for that. We're sitting on that cash, and we're going to use that as a contingency. It just means we're not going to have it as debt. It doesn't change the fact that we're spending taxpayer money, right? The technology funds and some of these other funds are taxpayer money, So you can move the numbers around. The project's still $11.7 million, and the courts are going to contribute only parts of that for the next 20 years. And so, it's going to be a big look. The only bright side here is the other albatross around their neck is the community center. The final payment on that is in 2031, so we're only going to have to pay both of these huge debts for 13 years combined. So, 7 years of this at least, we won't have both of them to pay for. That's all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Aaron?
With all due respect, we don't know it's going to be 11.7. We're still selling off the outlot. We're going to have less cost on the asphalt. What are we going to know until we get this out for bid?
Any other comments? Go ahead, Kevin.
And Karen, I have to agree with you there. We're kind of looking and saying in a negative way, it's going to come in higher, and you know what? It just may. But then, in that point, once again we need to stop the bus. You do get to a point, and I'm hoping, my hopes are that if it does pass tonight, that it doesn't come in any more than 11.7. I want that to be of record. If it comes in any higher, my vote is a resounding no. period.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor for the resolution. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Kavieski.
Nay.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Nay.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Nay.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
5-3, okay. Okay, let's move on. Next item, another big one. Consider acting on a proposed 2019 budget. We need a motion to approve the proposed 2019 budget.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2019 budget.
Second.
Okay, before we get started, there's a couple things I wanted to go through, and this kind of coincides with what Lori's going to talk about, but it kind of goes back to maintaining that $62,425 reduction, but kind of reallocating funds to a different area. As you recall, we stated early in the process that we had achieved $146,000 savings in our health insurance fund. And by doing that, we took that $146,000 and moved it into the general fund reserves, basically, towards a purchase of equipment for next year. So we moved that whole $146,000 into that area. My proposal, and this is just something to bring up for discussion, is of that $146,000, and what we did is we took the street sweeper out, and we took the drop ceiling out for the community center. My proposal is to take the $50,000 of that $146,000 for the street sweeper and $12,000 for the ceiling, and just leave the $84,000 in reserves. That way we can still purchase the products that we need this year, or for next year, and still move some money forward towards a deficit we will have in 2020 for the, what were we gonna buy in 20, we needed, it was for a truck?
The 2020 capital is over the current
So
year
it
by
goes-
400,000.
It goes to that for that capital project, and we still maintain the $62,425 reduction in the property tax and to the levy, so we still achieve what we wanted to achieve by reducing taxes that much.
You're gonna have to say that. You lost me, Mayor. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
we have
Run it
140
by me one more time.
We have
what you wanted.
$146,000 that we moved, or that we achieved savings on healthcare.
140.
146.
Okay, right.
Take 50 of that 146 and move it towards the street sweeper that we were going to push till next year.
Okay.
Take 12,000, move it towards the ceiling project that we were gonna push to next year or later. Take the 84,000 and move it to the 2020 reserves instead of the full 146.
I think what the mayor's saying, that the net amount to the levy
Net
would
is
be
the
the
same.
same as what was provided in the memo tonight. It's just reallocating that amount that was put aside for future and putting those pieces back into the projects that
Right.
you removed.
And that way we're not pushing something back and then having a levy that comes up next year that's going to be extremely higher.
Okay, so
That's what we're trying to balance things out so that we can keep it smooth.
Yeah, do you mind if I clarify what you're trying to do? Is that
Sure.
okay? So we saved this 146 on the health benefits, and
Yep.
I guess I didn't understand the plan with that money was to put that in reserves?
Yes.
Yeah, it's currently, and Lori's coming up, but it's currently shown in the capital projects fund earmarked to help reduce next year's capital levy.
And we're gonna use that 146 savings instead of to reduce our overall tax burden this year to reduce the capital spending for next year.
Yes.
Or at least
That
part
was
of
what the committee had put
And
in there.
that
Mhm.
includes the 50,000, at least for this year's budget of the street sweeper, and
that's-
adding in the.
That's what I'm proposing.
The
is
drop
that-
ceiling too, back in the drop
Yeah, we
ceiling.
bring those two things back in, we still save the amount that we wanted to save, but we get that done this year.
He's proposing reducing the amount of the reserve by $62,000.
Right.
So my only comment would be, I'm okay doing that for maybe for the street sweeper, but the drop ceiling, I'm not for.
Well,
yeah,
however we
it's-
want to do it,
yeah.
so. So I'll let Lori go through her.
Good,
Did you want to present anything, or?
You know,
you
all
really
I have is what the changes were from last time.
Okay.
Everything is outlined in the memo that you have. So at the last council meeting, after the public hearing, you reduced the public hearing budget by $62,425. Okay, so in the budget that was proposed, as Sarah said, we had about $150,000, and we actually put $150,000 into capital that we will use for 2020 capital.
So it was going to capital, not reserves.
Well, same
Right,
thing.
it was
Right.
going to capital.
But it's earmarked for capital.
It's
It's not in
earmarked for
the
capital.
general fund reserve.
So basically, we reduced the operating budget by those dollar amounts and transferred that to capital, because the capital dollars, as you see in the long-term financial plan, we have a higher need for capital dollars in 2020 and beyond. So we went ahead and moved it over there. That was the plan.
What's our total reserves right now? Not capital, just our general fund reserve.
Our general fund reserve,
Yeah. We used to have at one point we had like 3 million when I started.
Oh, we do.
We still have
Yes, we
a
do.
significant reserve amount.
right.
What is that
We
number?
want to keep a certain amount.
Right, I understand that.
Right,
There's a-
so currently, what we're doing with our reserves, we have a policy that we hold 25% of our general fund revenues and capital in reserve. That's our 25% reserve that we keep all the time. That's just under $4 million that we keep. The remainder of the reserve is what we use to fund advances for TIF projects or, other projects that come up. Currently, we are advanced out most of our surplus dollars.
So I would be in favor of doing that this one time. But I think we're going to have to look really closely at some of the other equipment we're purchasing out there too. And there's, our budget's way screwed up next year on that.
Well, that's why I wanted to do that this year, so we don't push the street sweeper to next year too. Otherwise, we'd end up with that and whatever we needed. So, just kind of, it smooths things out and gives us a more level.
Yeah, interesting.
Instead of spikes in the budget. Nobody likes a spike in the budget.
Yeah, the big objective here was if we put that 150 in carryover instead of in reserve, that you would have an extra increase in next year's taxes because we still need to buy that capital project.
Lou?
I just wanted to address the drop ceiling part of it, because that was something that we discussed as an elimination from the budget. I did take the time to go and take a look at that room in that lower level, because it seemed a little high for what was discussed. And there was a memo that was sent out, and it's not just the drop ceiling, it is the fire suppression system that needs, those water heads need to be turned down. The lighting in that room gets addressed. The acoustics in that room, I did experience, and for the use of what that room is being promoted as and what it's what it could be used as in the future, I think it's compromised without that ceiling in place because of the way the acoustics perform. I know there have been some people who have rented that space who won't rent that again. There were some people that rented that space that I think asked for a refund. By finishing that room out, I think the revenue generated with that investment will come back to that space. So that's why I asked for that memo to be brought back to council so you can understand the whole scope, because with that whole scope in mind and with the impact of that space and what it provides to the community, that $12,000 investment to me made sense.
I agree with you, Lou. Go ahead.
Do we have a general idea of what the payback period would be?
I would not be the expert at that, but I would like to offer my thought on that. I think it'd be really hard for John to tell you what the payback would be, because if you start losing potential clients in that space, customers, because of the way it performs, then you're going to have a loss of revenue. If you take a look at the last 2 years' performance of that space with rental revenue, it's starting to climb, and I think it'll start to fall off based on some of the recent activity that we've lost or become stale at.
Kevin?
That room, why was it never completed? What's?
There was a lot of rooms there that were completed because the budget that was available and the use of it at that time said don't complete it.
So when you all were spending the $8 million, you didn't take into consideration the completion of these rooms?
It was considered. It was just the fact that that room wasn't completed. It wasn't needed at the time. Go ahead, Charlie.
There was discussion at the time that that room was gonna end up being like a cafeteria concession area, and it didn't actually work out for anybody to come in and turn it into their concession area. They didn't want to spend the funds to do that, and that's why it stayed pretty much a white room for a while.
It's a basement room, and it's just like, you know, when you finish your basement off, you don't do that when you move into your house. You wait till you decide you need it, and then you do it. And that's what this is.
Thank you.
Any other comments? But what we need, I think, is a motion to amend the budget to what I proposed. Go ahead, Lou.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the 2019 budget to reflect the changes associated with the expenditures in the memo.
Well, the memo doesn't have those changes.
Right, but the elimination of those expenditures summarized in memorandum dated November 14th, to have the street sweeper for $50,000 put back into the budget, and the drop ceiling for the community center of $12,000 put back into the budget, paid for out of the reserves.
And to reduce the reserve
To reduce
amount
the
to
reserves.
capital.
Okay.
And to approve the budget as amended.
Correct. And to
You don't have
approve
to
the
go
budget
through it
as
twice.
amended. Yes. See.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Go ahead.
So just a general comment on that. What I personally, I'm going to vote against the amendment too, because what I think we should
Well,
do.
it's not an amendment, that's the whole thing.
Oh, that and the budget, so this is the whole shebang here.
The whole shebang.
Well, this will take longer than I thought then. No, so why don't we just use that 146 to offset the tax increase? Why don't we use that to offset what we're gonna be increasing the tax rate for, which is, I think, what are we increasing 2.2% to the current taxpayer? Why don't we just, instead of using it for the street sweeper or whatever, which we already pulled out, why don't we just reduce the tax burden? Look, I haven't been happy with the budget cycle this year. A lot of people probably notice my frustration. We keep saying, after every time we spend money, whether it's FONGS, the Northeast Regional Park, the PD, we're gonna tighten our belts. I think we've all said that at some point or another during these discussions, and we just never do it. And we just keep raising taxes, and we keep just moving ahead. Now, we have a structural budget problem next year with our capital budget that's gonna take a lot of hours to address and figure out. And I don't agree with necessarily kicking the can down on the street sweeper issue, but boy, you know, Waukesha County just passed their budget. I think Faro signed it last week, and they reduced their taxes again. The state has reduced its taxes multiple times. Well,
I'm
whatever.
just saying,
I mean-
if we got to report our taxes on equalized value like the school and the county do, we would have a tax decrease as well.
That's fine. The reality, though, is, right, that's right, that's how it works, but the reality is, it's still an actual tax increase for these folks. It's a 2.2% increase for people, and when we add the PD in next year, and when new school taxes come in, there's gonna be significant increases for everyone across the board. And look, we're a conservative community. That's the way I see it. That's the way my constituents are. This is not a conservative budget, and we haven't been a conservative budgeting for quite a while. So I'll be voting against the amendment. If we've got the 146, and we have that big of a reserve account, we should put it right towards this to keep our taxes down or flat when we can. And I did vote for a tax increase one year. That was when we added a police officer, because we were told we needed it, and I believe we did. And that was a valid reason to raise our taxes. I don't see that this is valid this year, so.
Evan?
If we went ahead and put that 146,000 into reserves, what would that reduce the overall tax burden?
If we, if we did not put it into the capital reserve, it would go into carryover for the city. It would reduce the taxes this year. And then if you decided to use that carryover next year, it would increase the taxes incrementally more next year
That wasn't
because
my
of that.
question.
That's part of your question. The actual amount of $150,000. Just a second while I do that. Yeah, just let me put it in here and give you the actual number. It's gonna take 1 second.
Not a problem. And if you can give me the percentage on that too, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, if I take $150,000 out of the capital reserve and take it out of there, it changes our tax rate from here, 562 to 508. I'm sorry, 555. Don't scare
I was
me.
gonna say, wow.
555.
So 7 cents.
Yeah, that didn't sound right, yeah.
What'd you say,
555.
That's pretty good on the fly, though, Laurie.
You were close.
Yeah, so, yeah, $5.55, from 562 to 555.
So that's 7 cents?
What does that save the average homeowner?
Right. What does that save the average homeowner?
Yeah, so the average homeowner would pay, that's a savings of,
14 bucks.
this actually says 11, so
So 11 bucks.
you're close.
175.
So $1 a month.
Yeah.
And if we do that, and then next year, when we come back and we have to reallocate it, how much does it raise the taxes next year? See, that's the whole point is, you can say, okay, we're gonna do this and make it nice and level, but then next year it goes like this. And wouldn't you rather see it level than have a spike? That's my whole point.
Yeah, but it's not level, because what's happening there is it's increasing.
Yeah, it
It
is,
may
but
be
next year it's gonna
increasing at a
increase
slower
significantly.
rate.
Next year's
It may
gonna-
be increasing at a slower rate, but it's still increasing nevertheless. And I'd rather see a large portion of that money go to help, once again, reduce our taxes, okay, than to go into a project that maybe we can put off a year or 2 years down the road. My question here is, do we need that street sweeper? Is it necessary? Are we at that point now where, like a car, you know, if you, one more thing and it's actually gonna cost you more money than the car is actually worth? Is that the thing with the street sweeper at this point?
Thank you, Alderman
We
Ellis.
discussed already at the committee.
I got short-term memory problems.
So the sweeper that we're talking
No, no,
about is a
pull your
2000.
mic.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'll get you step stool over here. So the sweeper that we're discussing is a 2007 model, and we've realized in looking at the industry that sweepers will last 7 to 10 years. It's a fairly abrasive environment that they work in because they're pulling up their grits and everything, and so there's a lot of wear and tear to the internal parts of a sweeper. Now, the one that we have been using. We actually had looked to replace it last year, and it was pushed out into this year, and you know, could it work? I'm not gonna sit here and say no, but I know what happens when it does go down, which we did have to happen to us when we tried to keep a sweeper an extra year. We ended up having to rent one for $18,000 for 1 month and then still had to turn around and purchase one. So when we look at the fleet and we bring forth the recommendations, it's to try and avoid those, you know, significant costs that can happen if you keep something too long. We try and keep the equipment as long as we can, we truly do, but, you know.
Thank you.
Eric?
I have an unrelated, were you done with the
Yeah.
street sweeper? All right,
Yeah,
I got a
go
question
ahead.
for Lori about the long-term, the short-term debt. Can we convert that to long-term now that the police station's gonna be, or is that too late to do that?
The answer is it's really too late. And the other thing is, we couldn't do it quite yet because you're still talking about selling the outlot. So until we figure that out and get that separated, that's private purpose, where ours is public purpose. I need the whole refinance to be public purpose.
And we haven't seen the bids yet. I mean, we may end up, like Kevin says, changing our mind.
$11.71.
Period. 50 cents.
No, until we have
But it's good that we
Not
didn't
yet. We
put
won't-
it all in there.
But when we borrow next year, I'll refinance it.
Okay, with the outlot issue, it's a good thing we didn't go long-term then, is
Right,
what you're
yeah,
saying.
because
Yeah.
now we can do what we need to.
Now we
and-
have options.
Because right now, that's one lot, and that any part of private purpose would make the whole debt issue taxable, and not exempt. So that would raise our interest rates on everything.
Okay, and that's all I got
Yep.
for you. I guess I agree with Matt's comments on that we always say we're gonna cut taxes and we're gonna tighten our belts and we never do. One thing I noticed, I was looking at the long-term plan, is that we still have squad cars out there every year And we shouldn't need to buy those as often with indoor parking facilities, because one of the reasons we said we need indoor parking is because the cars run 24/7.
A possibility.
It's a strong possibility.
Well, it is, yeah, but we don't have the.
I'm not asking to do it this year, but what I'm saying is every year I see out
Sure.
there 3 more squad
Sure,
cars.
that's a good point.
So maybe there's some
Do
savings.
you have something you wanted to
I'm
add?
trying to
No,
figure
I-
out ways to save money
Sure.
down the road. I'm trying to look at the bright side here.
Bicycles. I like that.
I agree with what Derek says, and we'll take a look at that when the time comes, but I do want to
Not
point out.
asking for it this year, but next year.
I understand that,
You wanna
but
raise
I
the
do want
mic
to
up?
point out, historically, we've replaced 3 squad cars every year. 2 years ago, we started doing 2, 3, 2. So we look at our actual mileage, and we've stretched the car out 1 additional year doing it that way. So just, we're looking at that, different ways we can do that.
But you said one of the reasons we needed indoor parking was so that they
Correct.
didn't run all the time and
Right.
go through a quart of oil and burn all
Correct.
the gas. So
Yeah.
we should go through less fuel in theory, and there should be less hours on those vehicles.
Absolutely.
Quite a
I-
few less from what you're
I
telling
agree,
me.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to remember too, the city gets bigger and bigger and bigger, so they'll be driving more, so it kind of offsets.
1 year though.
It kind of offsets itself.
Just throwing something out there for next year.
Other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor for the amended budget. And this would, by voting here, if you vote yes, this approves the budget as amended. Right? Okay, call the roll.
Wait, I'm confused.
If you vote yes, it approves the amended budget.
The amendment, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The full budget with
The amended budget.
Right.
Okay, call the roll.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Nay.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Nay.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Passed, right?
Yes.
Okay, next item is set the property tax levy for 2018.
The property tax levy for 2018 would be $11,317,208.
Need a motion to approve the tax, set the property tax levy?
I'll move to set the 2018 property tax levy at $11,317,208.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Nay.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Nay.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to new business. First item is consider act on the third amendment to the offer of purchase of 1101 Silver Lake Street by Matter Senior Living LLC. We need a motion to approve the third amendment.
I'll make a motion to approve the third amendment.
Second.
I will turn this over to our city attorney.
We had to stretch out the closing date till the end of this month to get the easements in place that we will need for the public infrastructure.
And what is,
Close on the 29th.
close on the 29th, which is next Thursday.
Yes.
So we'll be doing the closing next Thursday, so the old YMCA will no longer be ours. It means we don't have to plow the snow there this year,
Get tax.
Up until next Thursday, you do.
which will save us money. Do we have a motion and a second on the floor? Any questions? Seeing none, call the roll.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
And moving on to staff reports.
Staff report from John this evening.
That's why you had the tie on, yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. I just wanted to give the common council and the general public an update on the pavilion project that is potentially going to occur at the Village Green. I've heard some rumblings at the community center and other places about the placement of it. It's going to block the view and a variety of other things, and I just wanted to set the record straight on where we stood. So we established a committee, 2 of our aldermen are on that committee, to review the potential of establishing a pavilion at the Village Green. At the conclusion of that meeting, they asked me to go back and have some renderings and some schematic designs in a very generic, low-cost approach, which will be done by a firm for nothing, by the way, to see what this would look like. That rendering will come back to that committee, If the committee is comfortable with moving forward with those concepts, or maybe have some adjustments, we'll take the next step. It would then go to the Park and Recreation Board for approval, and then it would come back to the Committee of the Whole for discussion to determine what direction we're gonna go. If all those committees choose to move forward with it, then we would establish probably an RFP, and we'll deal with that at that time.
Okay. Questions for John? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, John, I know I missed the last meeting because I was out. When's the next
Yeah.
meeting for that committee?
I haven't scheduled it yet because I want to get all the rendering stuff in place before and then I'll reach out to everybody. and
Can I
I'll-
get a copy of that rendering when, as soon as it's ready?
Sure.
I'd love to look at it.
Yep.
Okay, any other staff reports?
Nothing else.
Reports and comments from Alderman? Seeing none. Reports and comments from the mayor. I have several. First off, I'd like to thank everybody for their hard work on getting through the public safety facility questions. I know there was a lot of discussion. We've had several meetings. Again, none of this is set in stone yet, but it is going to the next step of getting bid out, and then at that point, we will be able to make a more informed decision on exactly how we want to go. So just want to congratulate everybody for actually sticking with it and getting things done. The budget passing, another big step for the city. That's always something, and I think the staff put together a good budget. A lot of discussion, but I think we did a good thing. We just talked about the closing on the YMCA. Would like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy yourselves. City Hall is closed Thursday and Friday, so. Friday is the start of the German Christmas market. Starts officially at 11 a.m. I get the honors again to tap the first keg at 11, so I hope I know Alderman Stray's usually there.
You need help? Yeah.
So come on down and join into the fun.
I'm working
Next Saturday, December 1st, is the second annual tree lighting and Christmas parade. Hopefully everybody can come and join us there. We do the lighting at the roundabout. And the parade starts at Fowler, but I usually pick it up at the roundabout, so that's always good. I know, Kevin, you went with it last year.
Aren't you Santa this year?
No, I'm not. John is. No. Lou is.
What time was that, Mayor? There's conflicting.
5 o'clock.
Well, somebody said, we were discussing it yesterday, said it was on the website, it was like 1 o'clock.
The parade?
I don't know, we were we had a meeting.
I think it's 5.
That's what I thought, 4 or 5, but
5, yeah.
I don't know.
And the tree lighting will be
Tree lighting's at 5.
5.
Well, as soon as the parade gets to the tree. And then the following week is on December 7th, which is a Friday night, is the holiday train. We've been working together to get this set up, and we put together, talking with the Village of Heartland, because it stops in Heartland first. So what we put together is what's called a friendly food fight with the Village of Heartland. And basically what happens there is there'll be a contest between Heartland and Oconomowoc to see who can raise the most funds and collect the most food. I was asked what I thought would be, how we wanted to handle this, and I thought a good wager would be the losing community, the mayor or the village president in Heartland's case, would have to don the jersey of the opposing high school at a council meeting.
I like
Want to see me in an Arrowhead jersey? We don't provide anything, but if you want to see Heartland in an Oconomowoc jersey, come and support the food drive. And last year there was 10,000 people there, and we did a phenomenal amount of food. So the press release was issued. I don't know if it went out to the papers or. Yeah.
I didn't see.
I saw it online on Facebook, so it's something that would be much appreciated to get as much out there as we can. So that's December 7th.
If we donate food to the Heartland one, then that'll force you to wear the jersey? Food's still going to people that need it, right? But we're making you wear the jersey? Okay.
You're absolutely right. And I could amend this and say the council has to.
Giddy up.
Approve it.
So that's my comments. We need a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.